Today, a man's quest for adventure puts him in peril.
I was just being pushed straight out to sea. We're talking, you know, two-story house-sized waves, like 20-foot waves just pounding me.
Hear how he survived not one, but 5 long nights at sea in a kayak. That's next on Canadian Edition. Well, hello and welcome to Canadian Edition. I'm David Garrison. So glad you could join us for today's program. When I was growing up, we lived in Thornhill, north of Toronto, and in July, and we're in July right now, in July was always the time my dad got a few days off to take us on a little vacation. And every summer for years, we'd go up to a little lake just north of Toronto. We nicknamed it Mud Lake, but it was really called Lake Dalrymple, and there were some little cottages there. And I have these fond memories of sleeping out in the sleeping porch and hearing the frogs and the crickets at night, and then getting up real early in the morning to head out and to fish and to go after those smallmouth bass. Well, that's kind of something that I remember fondly in terms of my past. Some of us don't have great past memories, do we? So you think about summer and summer vacation. Hadn't been fun for you. Life has not been much fun. Perhaps the situation you're living in right now, you wish you had a dad. You wish you had a family that cared enough to take you on vacation, and you're stuck wherever you are at this particular moment. You're not on vacation. You're not in some beautiful lake cottage. You're actually in the midst of a horrific situation, and you don't know where to turn. Well, we want you to know that we're standing by. We're not on vacation at the Canadian 700 Club. We're standing by right now, and those toll-free lines are available, 877-431-7887 and 416-431-0700. If you need somebody to talk to, if you need somebody to pray with, if you need counsel from the Word of God to help you through a difficult situation, then call us, 877-431-7887 and 416-431-0700. Well, John Stockton was in search of the ultimate adventure, and when a violent storm swept him out to sea in a kayak, that's exactly what he got.
There was huge wind and huge swells just folding over me one after the other, and I got to the point where I realized if I don't get into this boat, I'm going to die.
It was a trip John Stockton will never forget that started with a simple longing for the sea.
I was at a place where I needed some rest. And for me, resting was, you know, going and having an adventure. That's how I recharge.
In search of some peace and quiet and a little adventure, John traveled here to the big island of Hawaii. He bought himself a state-of-the-art kayak and set out by himself into the vast Pacific Ocean. John's plan? To paddle up the western coastline of Hawaii from Kona and camp along the way. The first 3 days of his journey, the weather was pleasant, the waters calm.
My prayer was just, Lord, fill the day with signs of your love. And, you know, I saw 2 manta rays slip right underneath the kayak, you know, and just watching them go underneath. And, I saw these flying fish come out of the ocean like a machine gun and just kind of shot up out of the water. Birds flying everywhere, all kinds of schools of fish. It was amazing.
That is, until he caught sight of an ominous storm approaching. At this point, John was about a half mile from shore, just minutes from his next campsite.
And as I came around the point, I saw immediately a change on the surface of the water.
The storm had jumped the northern point of the island and was heading straight towards John.
The wind started getting more and more intense, and finally what ended up happening was a gust of wind just came and capsized me, just flipped me right over.
John had 2 choices. He could either swim back to shore or stay in his kayak and paddle back. He chose to stay in his kayak.
I was kind of paralyzed. I didn't know what the right move to do was or to make was. This is really bad. This is like the ingredients for disaster right here. And as I was looking back towards the shore, I could see the light was starting to fade, and I just started praying, Lord, this is going to be a long night if I don't get back. And I felt like the Lord made it very clear, you're going to live and not die.
Then, John saw a rainbow in the distance. It was a promise from God he'd need to hold on to, since where he was, the sea was still raging all around him. It was a long, treacherous night.
I was just being pushed straight out to sea. We're talking, you know, two-story house-sized waves, like 20-foot waves just pounding me.
And every time John got the boat right side up, a wave would knock him over and fill the boat with water.
I was trying to be Mr. Independent, you know, take care of the situation, but it was so severe I couldn't make any progress.
Hours later, and now 20 miles from shore, the storm finally subsided. John made it into his kayak and out of shark-infested waters. For the next 21 hours, John paddled back toward shore. John was fading fast.
I started yelling at myself. Come on, don't you want to live? This is your chance. You've made all this work all day. Get in there. And so I just gritted my teeth and I just started rowing like crazy, like a madman, you know.
That didn't last. Exhausted, John dozed off, and his kayak drifted farther and farther from shore. When he woke up, he was sunburned and helpless.
I just said, Lord, my arms are just like, you know, wet noodles of spaghetti. You know, there's no strength in them at all. They're sore, they're tired. And I just started saying, Lord, what do I do? And I felt like the Lord said, paddle and use your cell phone.
Since John was so far out at sea, he'd figured he wouldn't get any reception and his battery was low. But John pulled his phone from his waterproof bag and amazingly acquired a signal. He dialed 911 and spoke to an emergency operator. He communicated minimal details and then lost connection. Still, the operator was able to pass on enough information to set a massive search mission into motion. When John's phone finally regained signal, he had a message waiting from Coast Guard Petty Officer Justin Acosta. John called him right back.
I kind of knew the tone of his voice and just how desperate he was, and he needed our help soon.
With a challenge this big, were you finding yourself praying to God for help?
You know, there's only so much I can do, and I really started praying about that. At this moment, he just puts his trust in the Lord, and, you know, I was just praying for patience for John and for hope, and, you know, just to be strong, not to give up.
Meanwhile, John anxiously awaited his rescue. One plane flew over him 10 times.
And I came to the realization, they can't see me. I am just this little speck in the ocean. They cannot see me. And I started to feel this just absolute dread, you know, inside of me.
Night fell. John had now been stranded at sea for 3 days and 3 nights. Delusion set in.
I started having these weird kind of escape, you know, visions or whatever. I had this imaginary friend on the boat, this like Japanese sailor, and I started saying, hand me the oar, come on, do your part, you know, and I just, what are you saying, you know, stop it, you're losing your mind. And it started to really scare me. I remember a saying from a pastor, you know, when you don't know what to do what you do know, and then you know what to do. And what I did know to do was a Bible study.
One psalm stood out.
It was, save me, O God, for I've sunken down into the pit, you know, and I just really identified with this. And I said, Lord, I'm in a pit. You're going to have to bring me out of it. And I looked over to my right, just as I finished, you know, reading, and I heard the rumble of engines, and I looked, and there was this plane sweeping up the horizon.
It was now day 5 of John's perilous journey. He was 80 miles from shore. It was the end of the day when Navy radar operator Gary Phillips urged his pilot to make one last pass. He too had been asking God for help.
I was just praying that he would put me in the right position to be able to find John.
God did.
You try to imagine from 500 feet in the air what a small kayak would look like with a person in it, and then all of a sudden he went by.
Relief swept over John as rescuers pulled him from the water. He was taken to a nearby hospital where he was treated for severe dehydration, sun and wind exposure, and 2nd and 3rd degree burns. Later, when he inquired about the phone calls he made at sea, he found that, mysteriously, the phone company had no record of them.
And they said, I'm sorry, sir, I don't know what to tell you. He didn't call us, we didn't host it, he didn't make the call.
The Coast Guard labeled it a miracle. Local papers did the same. Justin, Gary, and John all knew.
When you have God on your side, anything is possible.
It's just a testament to the power of prayer.
This is what God has done. It's a total miracle.
Like an anchor in an angry sea, oh, the love of Christ holds on to me. My Redeemer, He never lets me go.
Since the rescue, John's had time to process his battle at sea. He now realizes God knew where he was each step of the way. All he had to do was surrender, pray, and believe.
And I went from a place of being totally independent to just pure prayer. And that to me is what the Lord was teaching me. That's what faith is, the absolute hope of things unseen. Absolute hope upon hope. You can't see anything working, but you know that God is good. You know that He is loving. I know, because I was in the boat, what name I called on. I know what name I cried out to, and I know what name delivered me.
You know, I'm a water person. I love to be around the water, love to fish all summer. Every chance I got, we'd head out into the woods and up to the Temagami River and up into some lakes areas just to fish. Just love to be on the water. But sometimes storms would come in, sometimes darkness would fall more quickly than we anticipated, and it was easy to get lost. And those woods can be pretty frightening. And I haven't had the experience that we just saw in terms of being on the water and not knowing where you are. But I have had the experience of knowing that unless God shows up, this is not going to be a good day or a good night. Maybe that's where you are at this particular point. Are you in a situation that is dire enough, difficult enough, dangerous enough, that unless God shows up, you're going to be in deep trouble? Well, we want to assure you that if you will trust Him, the Christian walk talks about faith. We say that faith is kind of the coin of the realm. It's the money that basically helps you navigate the challenges of living in a fallen world. Faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. That hope is in Jesus Christ. That substance of things not seen is that confidence that even though you can't see God, He's watching over you. He's concerned about you. And so whatever your situation is at this particular moment, whatever your circumstance, we want you to exercise faith. Now you say, well, Dave, I don't know what that is. I don't understand faith. Well, we have some teaching material that we would love to send you, a little teaching booklet called Faith. It'll basically inspire you and inform you and give you some scriptural foundations so that you might build your faith. 877-431-7887 and 416-431-0700. It says that we please God not by the works that we do, but by the faith with which we do those works, trusting that God Himself is watching over us. And so we want to encourage you this day. Don't be afraid. Don't be worried. Cell phones may not work in your particular situation, as we saw in this particular case, but miraculously, God can communicate, and you can communicate with Him, so that in the end, even though they couldn't figure out how that cell phone message got through, it was the grace of God that caused the communication to occur. You have access right now in prayer. And if you'll exercise that praying in faith, and we would love to join with you. It says if 2 or 3 of you will join together, unite together in faith believing, then what you pray for will be answered. We have faithful and faith-filled prayer warriors standing by at 877-431-7887 and 416-431-0700. Please, please, don't wait another minute. Give us a call and let us stand with you in faith, trusting God for your future. Well, up next, bad news after surgery.
You're never going to speak again above a whisper.
A praying husband.
God spoke to me and says, she is going to be fine.
A believing wife.
I'm going to believe for total healing.
And an impossible outcome.
This is absolutely a miracle what took place.
Rhea McGarry hosts a TV show in the Atlanta area. Her voice is heard by thousands of people, and that's incredible, because after she had surgery for cancer, doctors told her that she would never speak above a whisper.
Orea McGarry suffered from chest pains for almost a year before she received a grim prognosis from her doctor.
And they told me that they found something in the x-ray and the blood work doesn't look good. So we think it's some type of cancer, but we don't know for sure. My mom had just died of cancer the year earlier, or a few years earlier. So when I heard the word cancer, I thought death.
You marry the most beautiful woman in the world, and all of a sudden that can be taken away from you in a split second. This cancer is invading her life. I just didn't know what to do. I didn't know where to go. My whole world just came crashing to a halt. I thought I was going to lose her.
At that moment, I said, I'm going to believe for a miracle. I'm going to believe for total healing. Because I've heard of people getting instant healing. And I kept thinking, well, I can do that too. I believe. My pastor was there praying. My husband was praying. We had called 700 Club to pray.
And it's amazing, as soon as I called the 700 Club, I felt just so much peace. It was the most amazing thing. I was just a wreck before I called, but as soon as I called them, it gave me the relief that I needed. It gave me the strength that I never thought I could have.
The doctors removed the cancer from her, but as she woke from the surgery, they delivered more bad news.
We had to take out the lining around your heart, disconnect half your diaphragm, and we had to remove one of the left nerves to your vocal cords, and you're never going to speak again above a whisper. It would be impossible.
Orea began 6 months of intense chemotherapy to kill any remaining cancer cells.
Really getting really sick, and the doctor, I overheard him say, this is the sickest patient that we have ever had.
Chemo almost killed me. My doctor said that the cancer's curable, but the chemo was the real struggle.
The prayers of her friends and family became a source of hope during her toughest moments.
When I was lying on the floor in the bathroom, just wrapped around the toilet bowl, he'd be on the phone. I could hear him agreeing in prayer on the phone with the 700 Club. And he didn't stop picking up that phone and praying all days, hours of the 6 months that I was in chemo, along with all of our friends and family and pastors. That meant a lot to us. And you know what? When you're sick, you really do feel the prayers. I felt a real warmth and that peace that passes all understanding. I knew it was going to be okay.
Doctors finally said Orea's cancer was gone, but unfortunately, so was her voice.
But I kept praying, kept staying and pray that her voice would be restored. I says, I don't know how long it's going to take, but it'll be restored. God spoke to me and says, she is going to be fine.
And I couldn't speak for almost a year. It was really, really bad, very faint. Couldn't even make a phone call because people would hang up on me thinking it was an obscene phone call. But about a year or so later, my voice starts coming back. And before you know it, I just realized I'm talking. And it kind of like one of those aha moments. This is really a lot better. And I went back every year to my doctor to get my checkup. And they're like, you're sounding good. You're sounding good. I'm like, yeah, and I'm not supposed to. So I'm a testimony of miracles happen in God's timing, not in our instant, God, can you do this for me and do it now?
Doctors said this was impossible, that she would not speak no more than a whisper. And this is absolutely a miracle what took place. And so I believe in miracles.
Today, Orea and Brian produce a TV show in the Atlanta area. Her voice can be heard encouraging people to expect the miraculous in their lives too.
Anytime somebody says that can't be done, that's impossible, that's an opportunity for God to show how great He really is. I don't believe in impossible no matter what it is, because in God's eyes, He can do anything.
All things can be done through Jesus Christ. You can be healed. Your drug addiction can be healed. Your cancer can be healed. Your stress can be healed. God wants us to make it very simple. Believe in Him and believe in His Word, and everything can happen.
Boy, what a great story. And it's also a story of faith, like we've been talking about today. And faith sometimes means that you need to persist over time. Sometimes when we don't understand the way God works, when we pray in faith believing, it just happens like that. It just occurs. There are other times when you have to kind of seek and keep on seeking, knock and keep on knocking, ask and keep on asking. And that may take weeks, months, perhaps even years. And, that shouldn't surprise us, because Jesus exhorted us to demonstrate our faith, as he said in Matthew chapter 7, verse 7, that we need to knock. We need to knock, but if we don't get an answer, keep knocking. We need to ask, and if we don't get a reply, we keep asking. If we seek, then we need to continue to seek, even if we don't find immediately what we're after. Because we have the promise, he goes on in that Matthew 7 chapter to talk about God will give us good and perfect gifts. Sometimes we don't understand why he's waiting so long to give us that which we need or that which we desire. But his timing is always perfect. And so here's the point. We live as Christians by faith. Sometimes the exercise of that faith produces immediate results. Often, though, I find in my own pilgrimage that faith has to be exercised across time. We have to persevere. It's a long obedience in the same direction, as one author wrote. I love that phrase, a long obedience in the same direction, trusting that he is one who hears and he answers in his perfect time. Now, we want to build your faith, and we have a wonderful new teaching series that we'd like to make available to you of people who have exercised faith to trust God into the future. And it's called Life Beyond the Grave. These are people who have seen over onto the other side, and they understand that what they're trusting, and even though it's not yet seen, it shall be seen and experienced. That even though they don't fully know it in this life, one day they will know it by faith. And if you'll call us at 877-431-7887 and 416-431-0700, we'd be happy to send this to you. There's no cost or obligation, because we want you to walk by faith. Our exhortation, if for whatever reason at this particular moment you've asked and the answer hasn't come, you've sought and you haven't found, you've knocked and the door hasn't opened, persist. It's a long obedience that demonstrates your faith. We'll be back with more on Canadian Edition right after this. Please stay with us. The couple in our next story had so much debt they could not even think about retirement. To make matters worse, Mike lost his job, and suddenly the Masons were on the verge of bankruptcy.
Mike and Ginny Mason were looking forward to a retirement full of visits with their grandchildren. But as Mike entered his 60s, he came to a terrible conclusion.
Never going to be able to retire. Remember those thoughts over and over and over again.
Years of credit card spending had left the Masons in a deep financial hole.
I'm ashamed to say we're $44,000 plus in credit card debt only.
At least a third of the income coming in going back out to credit card debt, maybe more.
In the midst of their troubles, the couple made an important decision that they had been putting off for years.
Jenny and I made a commitment to tithe first. Jenny had always handled all of our finances, and she always just was so good to say, Mike, this is not right. We need to be tithing.
Because I'd been raised to tithe. You know, I knew that tithing was the way to go.
They also increased their giving to CBN, where they had been partners for years.
We felt like we were part of helping other people, just strictly because it was an encouraging time during a very discouraging period of my life.
Then shortly after they started tithing, Mike got terrible news. The tire plant where he worked was shutting down, and he would be out of a job. Mike considered their options.
I just decided bankruptcy was the only way. Even though I knew it wasn't the right way, it seemed to be the only way.
But I just kept praising the Lord, just kept thanking him. I don't know why I'm going through this, Lord. I'm going through it, but I'm going to make it. Somehow we're going to make it.
So they left the bankruptcy attorney's office without signing the papers. When they got home, there was an unexpected message from the tire plant. It turned out that Mike qualified for early retirement by just 3 days, and the company offered him a significant bonus for retiring early.
The lady laid the paperwork out in front of me, and lo and behold, there was enough money there to pay off our debts, for us to be able to invest some money and to be able to go ahead and take retirement.
We were finally at that point where things were beginning to be a miracle.
Mike and Jenny are enjoying their retirement and their grandchildren, free from the fear that came with debt.
I had to let go of fear. He's going to take care of me, and I know that now.
When I finally surrendered my finances to God, I went from debt to out of debt almost immediately, and something I could never thought about or planned on my own. So you can't outgive God.
You know, at the Canadian 700 Club, we're so thankful for partners just like the ones that you saw here supporting the U.S. ministry. We have them in Canada as well who support the kinds of things that we do. And they do it sacrificially. They do it obediently. And we just want to say thank you to you. Now, in these summer months, particularly July and August, as you're thinking about going on vacation, we want to remind you that while you are on vacation, we continue to broadcast, we continue to serve and minister day in, day out, 12 months out of the year, 24/7. And so if you're a regular supporter of the Canadian 700 Club Ministries, we would just remind you and encourage you to be sure and get your support in. Before you go on vacation, one last thing, would you be sure to put a postage stamp on that and send in your contribution? Many of you are contributing regularly through automatic deduction and automatic electronic fund transfers, and we appreciate that. That just happens automatically. But many of our folk mail in their contributions, and we do need your support during the summer. And if for some reason you've been watching the program and you would say, I'd like to be a part of that, I'd like to be contributing and supporting, we would deeply value your becoming a member of the Canadian 700 Club. It's just $20 a month. That's all it is. We have many folk who are able to give more than that and do, and we're thankful for our members who give $100 a month. Some give even more substantially. But that $20 a month basic membership is what helps us get the gospel out across Canada. And if you'd like to be a member of the 700 Club or you have any additional questions about membership, 877-431-7887 and 416-431-0700. Our prayer warriors are there. They have information on membership, and they can help you become a member. You can also go to our website. That's 700club.ca. That's all you need, www.700club.ca, and you'll see a little tab that you can click on in terms of donate to the Canadian ministries. And we just want to remind you that the money you give stays in Canada. Sometimes we have people who give designated gifts, and we appreciate those, and that money only goes toward the designation. But what we need are people like the majority of our 700 Club members who just give us funds month after month into the general fund so we can make a difference in people's lives. We want you to walk by faith, and if we can pray with you to that end, give us a call. God bless you. We'll see you next time on Canadian Edition.
For more information, or if you'd like to help continue the ministry of Canadian Edition, please write to us with your gift today. Our address is CBA, Post Office Box 700, Scarborough, Ontario, M1S 4T4. Become a 700 Club partner and write today.